From the Library of Congress in Washington, D.C.
It is my honor and my pleasure to introduce Elizabeth Alexander this morning. Her achievements are varied and many as a poet, essayist, playwright, teacher, and as a mentor. And in particular, I want to single out the quiet and essential role of the mentor, of the trailblazer. She shapes the lives of tomorrow's leaders in the classroom as chair of African American Studies at Yale University. And as a poet, of course, she introduced the world to our nation's leader, President Barack Obama, by reciting her poem, Praise Song for the Day, at his inauguration. In doing so, she became only the fourth poet in our nation's history to participate in the highest ceremony marking our democracy. The National Endowment for the Arts is happy to have supported the publication of this poem. And some 17 years before that, the NEA awarded Elizabeth Alexander a creative writing fellowship to support her development as a poet. It's safe to say that that investment paid off. From her debut collection, the Venus Hottentot, to the blues and jazz riffs of her Pulitzer Prize finalist, American Sublime, Elizabeth Alexander has tracked the path of the personal and the historical in verse, and we as a people are richer for that journey. I particularly recommend her collection of new and selected poems, Crave Radiance, and this is available at the book signing area for purchase, and also her signing will be from 11:30 to 12:30 this morning. So please join me in welcoming Elizabeth Alexander.
Good morning, everybody. Thank you for answering back. That's always nice. And thank you, John Petey, for that lovely, lovely introduction. And for that money 17 years ago. It really does make a difference, and it particularly makes a difference in the life of poets. We do our work. We know that we have readers. We know that human beings wither without poetry and without art. But sometimes, as an art form, it doesn't get a lot of attention. And so when that acknowledgement comes, it means a lot to us in our little tribe. Washington, D.C. is where I grew up. And so I want to start with a couple of Washington poems. Summertime. Where we live, there are caged peacocks in summertime, heavy in the heat, bald-headed, dragging their tails, which once a season they unfurl. Objects wrinkle in the heat waves rising from the pavement. A dead rat in a back alley gets a proper burial from a girl who can flip her eyelids inside out. And at the funeral, I wear my white go-go boots and sing, I Gotta Be Me. We buy coverless comic books cut rate, impossibly red vending machine pistachios which stain our hands. A hydrant illicitly opened. Kids riding the hard spray, caught in the rainbow of water. On television, senators talk, talk, talk. A Whammo Super Ball bounces off a sidewalk crack and into the cosmos. A red rubber planet could bounce to the sky and stick. And another Washington poem, and a childhood poem, Washington Etude. After rain, mushrooms appear in the park, but you cannot eat them. 1967, the year of the locust. They come to Northwest Washington by millions, and for days I crunch shed husks beneath my feet as they rattle and hiss their rage from the trees. Baby teeth bite baby onion grass and honeysuckle nipples, tiny tongue balancing the clear, sweet drops. I am a hummingbird, a cat who laps cream from the bowl. Dandelions are yellow one day, white the next. A mud puddle surrounded by brambles and blackberries is where God lives. Buttercups under my chin tell me all I need to know. Nothing blue occurs naturally in Washington, someone says, and I believe it. I'm put to bed when it's still light and hear other children playing out my window. Watch daylight bow. Regard the flare of blooming stars, the cicadas' maraca. And it seems apt today, actually, that almost any Washington poem I could have read from this book references the weather, though it is not yesterday. But you know, we tropic flowers are used to this. That's what it is to grow up in Washington, D.C. But it's nice to see fans. I feel we should all have beautiful fans on a day like today. Ars Poetica number 100, I Believe. Poetry, I tell my students, is idiosyncratic. Poetry is where we are ourselves, though Sterling Brown said, every eye is a dramatic eye, digging in the clam flats for the shell that snaps, emptying the proverbial pocketbook. Poetry is what you find in the dirt on the corner, over here on the bus, God in the details, the only way to get from here to there. Poetry, and now my voice is rising, is not all love, 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 and I'm sorry the dog died. Poetry, here I hear myself loudest, is the human voice. And are we not of interest to each other? And I thought about that quite a bit, have thought about that quite a bit over the last few years. The idea of poetry as the human voice. And that one of the many things that poetry does for us kind of writ large is give us that distilled and precise human voice with which to reach across the voids that separate human beings. And I think that's very important. This is another, there's a whole series of Ars Poeticas in this book, and one of them, the one that I just read, is sort of a classical one in the sense of it is about the art of writing poetry. But then, as I kept going with them, I thought, what about the art of the everyday? What about the artfulness with which we do small things in our day-to-day lives? And so a whole series of Ars Poeticas grew from that. And this is a poem called Ars Poetica number 28, African Leave-Taking Disorder, which I have to always tell people, but good, you laughed because you know that that's not really a disease, and that the poem will make clear to you what I'm talking about. African Leave-Taking Disorder. The talk is good. The two friends linger at the door. Urban crickets sing with them. There is no after the supper and talk. The talk is good. These two friends linger at the door, half in, half out, till one decides to walk the other home. And so they walk. More talk. The new doorstep. The night-gowned wife who shakes her head and smiles from the bedroom window as the men talk in love and the crickets sing along. The joke would be if the one now home walked the other one home, where they started, to keep talking, and so on. African leave-taking disorder, which names her children, everywhere trying to come back together and talk. This is a dream poem, so enter the landscape. Crash. And I've been, this poem I've been thinking about in particular, it's about a dozen years old, but I've been thinking about it in the last couple of years with the change of administration and the challenges that that brings to the populace. Crash. I am the last woman off of the plane that has crashed in a cornfield near Philly, picking through hot metal for my rucksack and diaper bag. No black box, no fuselage, just sister girl pilot wiping soot from her eyes, happy to be alive. Her dreadlocks will hold the smoke for weeks. All the white passengers bailed out before impact, so certain a sister couldn't navigate the crash. O gender, O race, O ye of little faith. Here we are in the cornfield, bruised and dirty, but alive. I invite Sister Girl Pilot home for dinner at my parents' for my mother's roast chicken with gravy and rice to celebrate. Black poets talk about the dead. Like Tony, he said, who came plain as day to my dream last night in a gangster beret, tangerine-colored suit, thigh-high go-go boots. She tipped that brim and said, "How you like me now?" After Etheridge passed, I went to see his woman with my daughter, who was 6 at the time and had loved him. We slept in the room where he'd slept, and in the night my child woke up and said, "I was talking to Etheridge just now. Can't you smell his cigarettes?" After she left us, we felt Mom close. She had passed, but not crossed, and those were good weeks. Her soup in the freezer, perfume in her handkerchiefs, half-empty cups of her tea grown cold. But bit by bit she left and then was gone. They do that so we can mourn. They do that so we believe it. It is what it is, wretched work, that we who the dead leave behind must do. Thank you. Autumn Passage. On suffering which is real, on the mouth that never closes, the air that dries the mouth. On the miraculous dying body, its greens and purples. On the beauty of hair itself. On the dazzling toddler, like eggplant, he says when you say vegetable, chrysanthemum to flower. On his grandmother's suffering, larger than vanished skyscrapers, September zucchini, other things too big. For her glory that goes along with it, glory of grown children's vigil, communal fealty, glory of the body that operates even as it falls apart, the body that can no longer even make fever but nonetheless burns, florid and bright and magnificent, as it dims, as it shrinks, as it turns to something else. Poised. Having become my grandmother, by always carrying a folding umbrella in my pocketbook, by virtue of having reached the age she was when I first knew her, I always carry peanuts, Kleenex, spare pencils. I now understand just in case. I am the woman who drills a finger in a child's mid-spine for posture. I wear red lipstick, no longer buy cheap shoes. I see who I have become when my child parrots gracious or Lord have mercy. I perch like a bird smack dab in the middle of a power line. My life, half coming, half done. So I'm going to read 2 poems, and then I would love to have a conversation with you all. So then we'll have some questions, and then I'll finish with one wee poem. So this poem was written after watching an Obama rally in Miami in October of 2008. And the poem starts with that image, but it is not about that moment or about that person. hopefully. That was not my intent. My intent was that it would meditate on something larger than the moment, but start in the moment. Raleigh, Miami, October 2008. The awesome weight of the world had not yet descended upon his athlete's shoulders. I saw someone light but not feathered jog up to the rickety stage like a jock off the court, played my game, did my best, and the silent crowd listened and dreamed. The children sat high on their parents' shoulders. Then the crowd made noise that gathered and grew until it was loud as the sea. What it meant or would mean was not yet fixed, nor could be, though human beings always tilt toward we. Praise song for the day. Each day we go about our business, walking past each other, catching each other's eyes or not, about to speak or speaking. All about us is noise, all about us is noise and bramble, thorn and din, each one of our ancestors on our tongues. Someone is stitching up a hem, darning a hole in a uniform, patching a tire, repairing the things in need of repair. Someone is trying to make music somewhere with a pair of wooden spoons on an oil drum, with cello, boombox, harmonica, voice. A woman and her son wait for the bus. A farmer considers the changing sky. A teacher says, "Take out your pencils, begin." We encounter each other in words, words spiny or smooth, whispered or declaimed, words to consider, reconsider. We cross dirt roads and highways that mark the will of someone and then others who said, "I need to see what's on the other side. I know there's something better down the road. We need to find a place where we are safe. We walk into that which we cannot yet see." Say it plain that many have died for this day. Sing the names of the dead who brought us here, who laid the train tracks, raised the bridges, picked the cotton and the lettuce, built brick by brick the glittering edifices they would then keep clean and work inside of. Praise song for struggle, praise song for the day. Praise song for every hand-lettered sign, the figuring it out at kitchen tables. Some live by love thy neighbor as thyself. Others by first do no harm or take no more than you need. What if the mightiest word is love? Love beyond marital, filial, national. Love that casts a widening pool of light. Love with no need to preempt grievance. In today's sharp sparkle, this winter air, anything can be made, any sentence begun. On the brink, on the brim, on the cusp. Praise song for walking forward in that light. Thank you. Woo. Thank you. I'll get those afterwards. I would love to take a few minutes for your questions before concluding with a short poem. Are there any questions about anything at all? Yes.
Do you teach poetry?
I have taught poetry over many, many years in the university and also in summer workshops or when I go give readings sometimes. Now, in my job at Yale University, I teach literature only. I teach African American literature, but I sometimes teach in summer workshops.
Can I ask a second one?
Sure.
Do you think, so is there a basic structure of your poetry, or are you describing a concept or an image? I mean, is there a rhythm that you're trying to gather? Or
in my poems?
Yes.
Well, I hope that each one is radically different and utterly itself. So I'm not a poet who comes out of any one particular school or any one particular form. I like to think of the creative process that my mind is a Rolodex, and you just spin and spin and spin and spin and spin and have a lot of different options for ways, directions to go in, shapes with which to craft and sort of enclose the material of the poem itself. So no school, no doctrine, just trying to be as wide open as possible so that the poem, when it mysteriously comes, can have the proper craft options with which to make it what it ought to be.
Oh, thank you.
You're welcome. There's one mic. Yes.
Hi.
Hi.
I teach 9th and 12th grade English, and I introduce students to your poetry. They watch the video of the inauguration, and they watched Maya Angelou's in the Pulse of the Morning. And
Oh, nice.
ones who previously have been unenthusiastic about poetry, you could see them get it. And they
Oh,
really,
wonderful.
But I don't always have inaugural events at my disposal to, and that's my question. It's so disheartening when I start the poetry unit and the stereotypes begin and they groan. And do you have any suggestions for the ones who just have these preconceived notions of how to light a fire under them?
Yeah, did you say 7th and 8th grades?
No, 9th and 12th.
9th and 12th. See, here's the problem. When they're young, they don't have those preconceived notions. And when they're young, they have an inherent attraction to pattern, rhythm, rhyme, memorization, song. It's so much easier with younger kids. And then somehow this kind of, poisonous vapor gets into the room and tells them that poetry is hard and they won't get it and they're missing something and they're not understanding it. So that's what you're up against. And my advice would be to continue to take them back, because one of the things that I've done, I've never been a high school teacher, but I've done workshops with high school kids. And I ask them to learn and recite something, and then they say, meh, 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 meh. And I say, you know what? You could recite 500 popular songs or rap songs for me right now. And then, of course, they can, every single word. So, I say, let's try to bring those two things together. Let's think about what those practices have in common. And I think also there are resources better even than recordings of inaugural poems, because, of course, one of the aspects of reciting a poem at an inaugural is that it's a very, very, very solemn occasion. And so therefore I think calls for a certain kind of sobriety and delivery. But there are, for example, a wonderful series of books called Poetry Speaks.
Yeah.
Do you know those? And
Yes.
now there's Poetry Speaks kind of for teenagers.
Oh, okay.
With poems that are in varying ways thought to speak to some of the concerns of young people of that age. I won't say to speak to teenage angst, but to speak to young people. And what's beautiful about this series, Poetry Speaks, is that it comes with a CD of poets reading their work. And I think that that's a terrific resource. I think also I would put the students themselves, because they're younger than we are, to work on the internet, finding videos of people reading their poetry, because I'm amazed. There's so much more than I can find with my abilities, and I think that would engage them as well. But I think also to always remind them that performance is one thing, and poetry does live in the voice and in the body, but also part of your job is to teach them how to read it on the page.
Yes.
And so that's, when I'm writing a poem, that's my work. That's my work. Reading it well is not a job requirement, but writing it well is.
Yes.
Yeah.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you.
Hi.
Great question and great answer. I don't know if I can follow, but for those of us who like to write, it'd be interesting to know how you begin, how you plan where you're going to end, and most important, how you edit when you're writing.
Well, editing is the most, well, I won't actually say it's the most important part, although I feel I always must say it's the most important part, because so often people say, do you edit? And I want to say, do you edit? What do you mean? That's most of what I do. That's most of what I do, is pages and pages and pages of editing. And that's how you make it perfect, and that's how you, or aspire to making it perfect. I think for me, once again, and I hope this is useful to people who are, no poet, it's not, you can't support yourself with it. Every single poet has a full-time day job for the most part, because you don't make much money off of it. And so I think what that demands is the ability to kind of walk around with a bubble for it in your head, to always know that even if you don't have, you know, Virginia Woolf's Room of One's Own, and even if you don't have fresh flowers and a beautiful spring day and, you know, peacefully slumbering children, that you can always attend to your work. You can always keep a notebook. You can always jot things down, and then when you are able to find a little piece of time, and it doesn't even necessarily have to be, I used to think I needed whole days at home with nothing planned. Well, I don't have those days anymore. So an hour, you can get a whole lot done. The poet Lucille Clifton, who passed away in February, who was a very, very, very great American poet whose work I'm sure many of you know. She had 6 children. And she said, a natural state for writing poetry for me is at the kitchen table. And she said, 2 kids are fighting. One has the measles. Dinner is burning. And in the midst of all that, I can listen for. And I think also part of her point is that all of that is the stuff of the poems as well. So I think of poems as something that we attend to by going through whatever our normal days are, alert and alive, and with our ears open, and keeping track of things. And then when we have a little quiet time, and we don't need a whole lot of it, you just keep on plugging away, plugging away, plugging away. And that, since we are at time, the poem I want to conclude with was written right after Lucille Clifton died. And one of the amazing, amazing things that she taught so many of us as poets and as human beings is that worlds could be expressed in very, very, very small spaces. Her work was exquisitely condensed. It also understood that none of us stands alone at this particular point on the historical line. We come from people and we move forward into other people. But we're connected with the people who came before us, and we're connected with the people who come after us. And so I got from her a wonderful sense of continuity and of ancestral wisdom that is accessible if you let it be. So this poem to end, and also just thank you so many of you for coming for poetry. It's a wonderful and heartening thing to see, and I'm really, really happy to have been here. This poem is called 1 Week Later in the Strange. 1 week later in the strange exhilaration after Lucille's death, our eyes were bright as we received instructions, lined up with all we were supposed to do. Now seers, now grace notes, now anchors, now tellers, now keepers and spreaders, now wide open arms. The cold wind of generational shift blew all around us, stinging our cheeks, awakening us to the open spaces, now everywhere, surrounding. Thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you.
This has been a presentation of the Library of Congress. Visit us at loc.gov.